Hello, my name is Dominic Wolf from Wolf-Detainment. I make games as a hobby, and last year I took part in the Epic MegaJam 2019 and wanted to try it again this year. Again, I took part in the jam as a one-man team because it was quite spontaneous idea. On Friday evening, Epic Games announced their theme. It was "It's been a long time, but we are not done yet." I thought about my own interpretation of it, and it made me think of an old man who gets a visit from the Grim Reaper at the end of his life and who realizes that he wasn't ready to leave yet. My original idea was to do a jump and run side-scroller in which the Grim Reaper chases you and you have to get away as far as possible. Since I used assets from the store for my game last year, this time I really wanted to create everything myself. But first I had to outline the plan, and like many others I used Trello for that. After planning, I had to decide whether I wanted to use 2D or 2.5D. I went with 2.5D because it let me a wider variety of choices for the optical using of assets. As my first step, I started working on the controls of the player and the basic features of the side-scroller. I designed the Reaper cam, which moved steadily at the same pace, and the wall connected to it through which the player would have lost if he had touched it. Because of this constant movement, I had to develop a spawn mechanism for the path parts so that the player could never run into empty space. The current goal of the game was to get as far away from the Grim Reaper or from the starting point of the game, so I needed a way to measure the distance and created a measuring actor and the first user interface to display the distance. After these mechanisms worked well, I was satisfied for the first day. On Saturday, I further took care of the Reaper cam. I created a widget as an end screen as soon as the character touches the wall, which shows how far you have walked and has the opportunity to restart. Next, I created a start animation with a countdown to let the player start with a small delay. And then I came up with a great idea. I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a multiplayer over the network? Well, the first part with the multiplayer was a good idea, but that with the network didn't work so well. Maybe it was just a small mistake I made, but since I couldn't figure it out, it actually cost me 6 hours. But at least I could keep the multiplayer part. At the end of the day, since I wanted to create everything myself, I decided to go for 2.5D with 2D assets, because I still can't really create 3D assets properly, and I felt confident that I could get something up and running quickly in time with 2D assets. So after that decision, I created my main character Grams in pixels to test whether I can handle 2D animation. I still had to read one or two things on the topic in Unreal, but it worked out very well and confirmed my decision to go with 2D assets. On Sunday, I planned my day a little in advance because I wanted to do certain things. This included first of all the design of the Grim Reaper, where I also took care of its running animation and implemented it in the game. I didn't create a new blueprint for this, but I hung it on the Reaper cam and the wall at the level of the player, so that the run ends when you touch the Reaper. In between, I created a street lamp and moving bushes for the background, because everything was too empty and grey for my taste. Then I came to one point that was most important to me: the music. Because what would a game be without a cool, catchy tune? And it resulted in what I think is a really cool soundtrack. Just listen. Finally, I improved the level with a few more elements and implemented a save game in order to be able to save the high score. Now, all that was missing for a functioning game was obstacles that I wanted to create in the coming week. Also, I started to document what I had achieved on the individual days in order to have everything ready for this devlog. Now came Monday. Actually, I shouldn't be talking about Monday because I couldn't do anything, but it is part of the week, so in short, it was a busy day at work and my energy was totally down, so I preferred to use the time that's available for my fiancée and my dog. On Tuesday, I also had to work, but afterwards I was able to motivate myself to program. After all, I wanted to achieve a lot. First of all, I wanted to have at least one obstacle and decided on a car that I pixelated first and then implemented as a blueprint together with the driving mechanics. It was here that I had to deal with collision queries between 2D figures for the first time. After I finished the car, I beautified the level by pixelating houses, paths and the background in general. Now came another milestone for me, the multiplayer. I needed the rest of the day to get it to run properly. Occasionally made strange mistakes, but was then able to solve them after a walk with my dog. A little tip on the edge: take breaks if you get stuck. For me, a walk helps, but the main thing is that you have to deal with something completely different before you get back to your problem first. At the end of the day, the multiplayer worked perfectly and I was pretty exhausted but also very happy. The next day, like Monday, I was very exhausted from work, but I was still motivated to do something. I didn't have that much time available, but I still wanted to create something and that's why I started pixelating. First of all, I created an animation for when you get caught by the Grim Reaper. I think it turned out very cute. Then I thought the Grim Reaper should be a little livelier, and so I got him a speech bubble. Then I created my second obstacle, an oil puddle, where the player cannot move briefly as soon as he enters it and is then put back in front of the puddle. Gramps also got new animations for hitting with his walking stick and a stuck animation when he falls into the puddle. The car got the ability to push you away as soon as you stood in front of it, and I implemented that the players in the multiplayer could push each other away by hitting them with the walking stick. Thursday, one day before the deadline. For this day, I thought about new functions that would be needed to make the game more playable, especially in multiplayer. I had the idea that you could not only hit with a stick, but also throw it. That would also give the second player the opportunity to catch up with the first player. So I needed a flying stick and the mechanics of throwing for the player. For this, I first made the animation of the rotating stick and turned it into a projectile with particle effects, which I had already used for the fog behind the Grim Reaper. There were minor errors here that I was able to solve, and after the throwing worked, I noticed something serious. Since the player has thrown away the stick, it shouldn't be no longer allowed to be in his hand until the stick collides with something or after a certain time. But I hadn't considered that in my animations, which is why the stick was part of the sprites, and now I had to change the animations so that the player no longer has a stick in the hand, so I had to change all sprites again. That gave me another idea. Since both players look the same at the moment, I wanted to equip the second player with different colors. But since I couldn't change this with materials, I had to recolor all sprites, which took a long time. Maybe there could have been an easier way, but since I had no idea how I had to do it, I was worried that I would have wasted too much time on finding it out. After I was done with that and implemented the change of sprites, I created another obstacle to give the punch more meaning. I decided on a container that prevents progress but can be smashed. As the last conclusion for the day, I created another small speech bubble for the Grim Reaper so that he can say wait instead of just stop. The last day was dawning and I had to take care of all the things that I had put aside so far. That was mainly the main menu, the beautification of the user interface, and something that I was missing completely: sounds. Since I didn't have to work that day and my fiancée was looking after the dog, I was able to use the entire day for the game. For the main menu, I first created various buttons, a start animation, and I split the soundtrack into smaller parts for the various sections of the menu. Then I wanted the game to automatically recognize when a gamepad is connected, but that ended in a little lost time in dealing with C++, and in the end I give up on that idea in favor of the time for the remaining tasks. After that lost time, I took a short lunch break with my fiancée, and after that I got back to work with full energy. And now the time for sounds had come. Since I wanted to do everything myself, I decided not to use any sounds from the internet. So I connected my microphone and started Audacity. All the sounds in the game came out of my mouth, with a bit of distortion here and there, but that was a very funny and welcome change from the previous tasks. After I tested and played everything again and again, together with my fiancée, especially for the multiplayer, I started the finalization. I created a little icon and let the game pack after a small optimization of the overall size, which means that the packaged game was only 74 MB in final size. It was now 6 PM and I had to quickly create a gameplay video because Epic wanted it for the Game Jam for the highlight reel, and before I hadn't done that I couldn't submit my game. So since I really had no idea how to create videos, this took a little longer than expected. But shortly before the deadline I was finally able to submit the game and I could close my many open tabs. So, this is the end of the devlog. Thank you for watching. Hope you could enjoy it despite my lack of English skills, and please let me know your opinion about it in the comments below. It was my first time making both a cutted video and a devlog, but in the future I want to make more of them about my game ideas and my GameDev journey. So if you want to stay updated about it, please consider to subscribe. And if you want to test my game for the Epic MegaJam 2020, you find a link in the description below. I hope we will see us in the next video, and despite the hard year, I wish you a Merry Christmas and the best of health.